I'm Anthony. I've been playing poker for a living since 2019. Hit that intro.
Don't soul roll me if you get quad fours, man.
You folded king, king, jack, jack? You owe me $350. Your money should be in there too.
Did you bluff me?
Would I ever bluff?
I'm leaving that shit. I'm on
No,
tilt.
it's on tilt. Thank you, sir. I would not lie to you, sir. I told you I had a full house. Doing the Lord's work. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
In this hand, I'm in the big blind holding ace-queen, 4-2, suited in hearts to my ace, and we take a flop in an unraised pot 6 ways. The flop comes down 8-4-4 rainbow. I flop 3 4s with top kicker, but this flop texture also hits some hands my opponents might play, like a rundown such as 8-7-5-4. In addition, I'm out of position against multiple opponents, so I decide to check and see what happens behind me. It's checked around and the turn brings the 9 of spades. The board is starting to get more coordinated. Now I have to be concerned with flush and straight draws. Believing I'm likely ahead, but not 100% sure, for a half pot bet on the turn. Straight and flush draws might continue for this price, but they need to be concerned they could already be drawing dead. This bet doesn't overly commit me to the hand, but it may fold out some opponents who have equity or at least get an opponent to define their hand should I be beat. Unfortunately for me, Pharaoh limped in with king 8-8-6 suited in clubs to his king and already flopped me pretty much dead, so he just smooth calls. The river is the worst card in the deck for me to see, coming the queen of clubs filling me up. In this spot, I decide to continue betting into my opponent, and here's why. I can still get value from a jack 10 that made a straight. If my opponent was still playing 4-8 or 4-9, I just outdrew them, and I can get value there as well. So I lead for 2/3 the pot, $40, and now Pharaoh springs his trap and raises it up to 100. I have to call 60 for a pot that is now 200, getting more than 3-1 on my call. I need to be good less than 25% of the time for my call to be correct. I don't call immediately though. I am concerned he flopped 8s full and slow played it through the river, but I figure he can also do this with some 8-4 and 9-4 combinations. As I make the call, I say if you've got 8s full, you're good, and see the bad news. In this hand, Kenny has gotten frisky in the low jack, raising to 15 after a limper holding king jack, 9-8 suited in clubs to his king. There are multiple callers. In the small blind, I look down at ace king, jack 9 suited in spades to my ace. Kenny generally plays on the tighter side, so I'm expecting him to have a stronger hand than the one he does have, and possibly be sharing some of the cards I have, which we can see he does, sharing 3 of them. Being out of position, I don't want to re-raise and get repopped and be stuck playing a bloated pot out of position against a tighter opponent, so I just make the call. We go 6 ways to a flop of 9-3-2 with 2 clubs. Aside from hitting top pair, top kicker, we don't have anything else going, so when Kenny continues betting, my hand finds the muck. In this hand, Akash opens with a raise from the hijack, holding a solid king-queen, jack-9 suited in clubs to his king. Next to act in the cutoff, I make the call with ace-king-queen 3 suited in hearts to my ace, and we go 3 ways to a flop of ace-6-5 with 2 diamonds, and since no one has the diamond draw, it's checked around. The turn is the 4 of diamonds, and once again, it's checked all the way around. The river pairs the board, bringing in the 4 of spades. With my opponents not having anything they can bet, the hand is checked down, and my aces up will win a small pot. T-Grinder limps in under the gun with a suspect king 10-10-5 suited in hearts to his 10. I decide to open my game up a bit, potting it from the low jack holding king-queen jack-6 suited in hearts to my king. I don't like having the dangler, but I have a tight image and I can represent a number of boards that might miss me against some opponents. Kenny in the small blind wakes up with aces, but with no suits and being out of position, he opts to just call to disguise his hand strength and not overcommit with decent but not amazing aces. We wind up going 3 ways to a flop of 7-4-4 with 2 spades. I'm up against 2 of the tighter and more solid players at the table in T-Grinder and Kenny, and they know that I know that they know this flop texture doesn't mesh well with my typical raising range, so it gets checked around. The 5 of clubs on the turn brings in some straight draws, and Kenny being in the small blind is the most likely out of the 3 of us to have a hand that connects with this board texture. He knows it's unlikely this board matches my hand, so the only opponent he really needs to be concerned with is T-Grinder. He makes a half pot size bet of 30, and neither of us have anything we can continue with, so Kenny's going to take this one down. The $10 straddle is on, and under the gun +1 I come along holding ace-king 9-9 suited in hearts to my ace. We go 8 ways to a flop of 10-7-2 rainbow, and it's checked around. The turn is the Jack of Clubs completing the rainbow board, so flushes aren't a concern. And despite my having 2 9s in my hand to block the nuts, it doesn't matter because Trouble in the small blind holds 9-8 with a redraw to a higher straight. He leads for $55 and I lay it down. In this double board bomb pot, I'm holding Ace-8, 4-3, all diamonds. And C2 boards come 8-8-3 rainbow and 9-9-2 rainbow. I flop the nuts on one board, but absolutely nothing on the other. And when it checks to me, I bet 50 and I get 2 callers. Now the turns come the 6 and Jack of Clubs, and now I no longer have the nuts on the top board, and facing 2 opponents, I'm hoping they're both holding a 9 and fighting over the bottom board, but I need to slow down and exercise pot control. Unfortunately, it's checked around. However, the river brings in the 7 and 5, giving Aaron the nuts on the top board, where I flop the full house, plus he has a flush on the bottom board. Unfortunately for Luca, he's got 3 9s on the bottom board and has rivered the nut straight on the top board, and he opts to bet 75. And now Aaron pots it to 465. Facing a bet and raise here, this is an easy fold for me. I've got the 3rd nuts up top and nothing on the bottom board. Luca isn't too happy but makes the call, and Aaron is going to scoop him. Kenny is under the gun and getting a little squirrely again, raising King Jack, Jack 9 suited in hearts to his Jack. On the button, I have Ace, King, Queen 9 with 3 clubs to my ace. I hate blocking the 2nd and 3rd flush draws here, but my cards are connected enough and have high card strength, so we can make nut full houses and straights at least, plus we have the button. I come along and we go 6 ways to a flop of 6 deuce deuce, once again completely missing me, and when Kenny bets, I lay it down. The straddle to $10 is on, and with multiple limpers behind us, I come along holding 10-9-9-6 suited in spades to my 10 on the button. We take a flop 6-handed, which falls Ace-9-7 with 2 diamonds. When it checks to me, I figure my set of 9s is the best hand, plus I block many of the straight draws, so my biggest concern will be an opponent with a diamond draw on this spot. I bet 35, and Akash with the Jack-high diamond draw, plus a double gutshot straight draw makes the call. The equities displayed on the screen I believe account for known folded cards, but looking at the equities without that information, we're about 60% favored. The turn is the 10 of clubs, bringing in a 2nd flush draw to worry about and giving Akash the stone cold nuts, plus 2 backup flush draws he doesn't need. The equities on the screen don't match up with the information I found using the card player odds calculator, which shows I only have 22.5% equity here. He checks, and you know what? Mama didn't raise no fool. I check it back. The river brings in the backdoor clubs following the Jack of Clubs, but Akash can't feel great with the 8 high clubs in his hand. He checks it, and I check it back and get showed the bad news, but at least I bet when I was ahead and I didn't put any more money in when I was behind. Under the gun, I pick up Queen Jack 10-7 suited in spades to my queen, and I bring it in for 5. Pharaoh and the low jack juices the pot to 15, holding Ace King 10-4 suited in hearts to his ace. Kenny once again picks up pocket aces, but they're kind of shitty with no suits and terrible side cards, so he just calls. We go 7 ways to a flop of King, King, Queen with 2 diamonds. Oh, look at that. Once again, a flop we miss. This is becoming a recurring theme for the night. When it's checked to Pharaoh, who bets and is raised the pot by T-Grinder, our cards can't find the muck fast enough. In this hand, T-Grinder wakes up with discombobulated aces, Ace-Ace-9-6 with no suits, and raises to 20 from the cutoff. I come along in the big blind holding Ace-10-8-2 with a suited ace, and we take a flop 5 ways, which falls King-Queen-8 with 2 hearts. It's checked around, and the turn is the 2 of spades, giving me bottom 2 pair, plus I still have the nut flush draw and a gutshot draw to Broadway. Since no one bet the flop, I figure my hand is best, and I lead for 75, and I get looked up by Wayne. While the images show we are a relative coin flip, not knowing the folded cards in the spot shows that my opponent will have 65% of the equity here with his flop 2 pair plus turn flush draw. The river is a meaningless 5 of diamonds, and I'm out of position against my opponent. I make a small blocker bet while going for some thin value at the same time, betting 75 into the pot of 250. Since no one bet on the flop, I figure my opponent will most likely show up with 1 pair plus a flush draw or straight draw that whiffed, but I get shown the bad news that he flopped top and bottom pair, and he'll take this one down. In this hand, we're playing a double board bomb pot, and I'm in the small blind holding Queen 10, 7-3 suited in hearts to my queen. The flops come out King 10, 7 rainbow and 9, 8, 6 rainbow, so I flop the nut straight with backdoor hearts and a redraw to the queen high straight on the bottom, and bottom 2 pair on the top board with some backdoor straight potential. Being on a shorter stack, I opt to make my stand here, and I bet 75 into the $80 pot. I get one caller, Trouble, who has a straight draw up top and top 2 pair on the bottom. The turn doesn't change the top board's texture too much, coming the 2 of clubs, but it does bring in a club draw as a potential concern. The bottom board brings a 4-card straight out, dropping me to the second nuts. Trouble is one of the more solid players in this lineup, so I have to slow down on this turn and he checks it back, making me think maybe he's got something like Queen Jack on the top board that hasn't gotten there yet. The river gives Trouble the nuts up top while I still have the best hand on the bottom board, and we'll wind up chopping this one up after I bet and he calls. Trouble brings it in from under the gun and A-Cash comes along, and since no one before me has shown any real strength, I opt to punish the limpers, raising pot to $25 holding 10-9, 9-8 rainbow. While I don't like not having any suits here, my tight image might have my opponents put me on hands that don't match what I actually have, allowing me to represent boards I miss or get value from boards I smash. Plus, I'm hoping to fold out the button and obtain position on the field. It works better than expected as my opponents show me some respect and lay it down.
I can handle things, I'm smart! Not like everybody says! Like dumb, I'm smart and I want respect!
Aaron brings in from the low jack with a relatively junky Queen 5-4-3, and I continue my efforts to widen my ranges and play more aggressive, raising pot from the hijack holding 8-8, 7-6 suited in hearts to my 8. As in the previous hand, my opponents will likely put me on a vastly different range, allowing me to rep flops I miss and get value on flops they think I missed. It appears I'm not getting any respect this time as we go 6 ways to the flop.
No respect at all.
The flop falls King 9-2 with 2 hearts, and when the field checks to me, I could easily have top set in this spot or a variety of combo draws that contain flush and straight possibilities. I decide to try and cash in on my image and I make a half pot bet of $60. We clear out some of the crumb bums, but Pharaoh on the button has the nut flush draw, and he isn't going anywhere, and Kenny has top 2 pair on the small blind. On this board, I think I'd like to see Kenny check raise my ass with his hand if he's going to continue, because there really aren't a lot of turn cards he can be comfortable hitting. Many of them will bring in straights or flushes. Perhaps he just wants to see a safe turn card before he commits, rather than risk getting it in with top 2 pair and being up against a monster combo draw with 2 cards left to come. I'm somewhat happy when the turn is the Queen of Hearts because I wind up turning a flush, improving my hand. But up against 2 opponents who called a bet on the flop that presented the flush as the primary draw, I can't be too excited about it. Kenny and I check, and Pharaoh decides to slow play and checks it back. Now the river pairs the 9, and Kenny comes out firing, and I have an easy fold facing a bet from a tight opponent into 2 players. Pharaoh is hating life because he could have bet the turn, and Kenny's going to fold, but now he has to pay him off to the tune of $150. There are multiple limpers, and we come along from the big blind holding ace 9, 5-2, suited in hearts to our ace. Not a great hand by any stretch, but suited aces multi-way have value, and it's only $3 more to come along. We take a flop 5 ways, which I completely whiff, falling king queen 7 with 2 diamonds. It's checked around, and when the turn brings in the ace of spades and Aaron bets, we get out of there. In this hand, T-Grinder wakes up with a premium ace-ace jack 10 suited in spades to his ace and pots to $15 from the +1 position. In the cutoff, I hold a semi-connected queen 10 8 7 suited in spades to my queen. It's not a great hand, but I don't believe I've ever seen T-Grinder raise any hand preflop except for aces, so I have a pretty good idea what half his hand is, and I'll make the call with position. He picks up 2 additional callers, and we go 4 ways to a flop of queen 10-5 rainbow. T-Grinder bets half pot for 30, and having flopped top 2 pair, I'm confident I'm ahead of his hand. Although if he happens to have aces with side cards of king jack, it's not so great for me. Still, on a shorter stack and with the likely best hand, I pot to $155. The other 2 players get out of the way, and the graphics show I have 59% equity based on the folded cards. Without knowing those, my equity against his specific hand is closer to 56%, but at least still a favorite. He calls, making the pot 372, and I only have 240 behind, but when the turn falls the king of diamonds, giving him the stone cold nuts, and he checks, Mama didn't raise no fool, sir, and I check it back. The river 4 of clubs changes nothing, and he announces, I will match your bet of the previous, and tries to extract additional value from me, and my hand hits the muck before he gets the words out of his mouth.
I will match you better than previous.
All right, that's going to take us to the halfway point. I have close to 30 hands from this stream to go over, and we'll finish them up in part 2 next week. Also, if you've already watched the stream and know the final results, be aware I did continue playing after the stream ended, so there's more to report in next week's episode. Thanks again for tuning in. We'll see you in the next one.
You know, after watching a video like this, sometimes I'll like it, sometimes I'll leave a comment, and sometimes I'll subscribe. Sometimes I'll even do all three.